Across the country, millions of people feel lonely. Brian was so lonely after losing the love of his life that he thought about ending his own.
Now I can see why people say loneliness is a major killer.
Louise fell into a pit of loneliness that she struggled to get out of.
The lack of contact with people, you need some human contact.
Carly's a single mum who finds lone parenting isolating.
It is still quite taboo. For whatever reason, it's not talked about.
These three people have opened their homes to us and are going to talk about it.
Oh, it was a fabulous day.
Brian married Margaret almost 40 years ago. They met through work. They were both nurses.
She was my companion. She was the person that I really warmed to.
During the first lockdown in 2020, Margaret was diagnosed with dementia. She died just a few weeks later. After her funeral, their children stayed with Brian at home in Inverness as long as they could, but eventually they had to go back to work.
And that's when I started to get depressed. I could cope at the beginning during the day, but we were coming up to the dark nights. So you were closing the curtains at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was it. So it was long, lonely evenings.
A once busy home had become quiet. Brian grieved during the cruel isolation of COVID. To make things even worse, he had 2 falls and lost a lot of his mobility.
At one stage, I must say I felt suicidal. I can now understand when I nursed my patients what it was like for them to go home with nobody there.
Can you see where Nibbles went?
Here.
There are many different situations that can lead to loneliness. Carly from London is 36. She adores her 4-year-old son Ezra, but she looks after him on her own, and that can be isolating.
Making big, difficult decisions, making parenting decisions can feel very, very lonely because there's no one there to talk it through, there's no one there to share the responsibility.
While for many the pandemic was an isolating time, for some, like Carly, the lockdown really was a leveller. She felt more connected to a world that was as restricted as she always is.
Coming out of the pandemic, people go back to their lives, and I could feel that sort of like panic, I think, of, you know, friends being able to go out and feeling like I was sort of being left behind. And yeah, that obviously felt really lonely for me.
In South Wales, Louise is getting used to being on her own. She's building a new life in a new place after her husband suddenly ended their marriage of 25 years.
It was catastrophic. I really felt alone. I didn't bother to get in the shower and wash my hair or brush my teeth, or I didn't even look in a mirror.
This happened just as the country was locking down with COVID. Fear and anxiety led to her own shutdown.
You tend to withdraw. You become your own worst enemy, really. Your expectations of life get less, and there were times that I felt very, very low and even thought at one point, you know, what's the point of carrying on? But the one thing that really kept me going was my grandchildren, that I wouldn't do anything to hurt them.
Charities say we need to get used to talking about loneliness.
The more people have those shared experiences, the more you go, oh, it's not just me.
Louise did summon up the courage to go out and meet people. She comes to this community cafe.
You just never know. It could be you in a few years' time. Something can happen in your life. If somebody smiles, smile back. Say hello to people as you pass in the street, because you could be the only person they speak to all day or all week.
Brian has been helped by a befriending charity. He's even trained to befriend other people.
Margaret used to love this one.
Listening to Margaret's favourite song is bittersweet, but he is learning to live with her memory and find a way forward. Yasmin Bottleby, ITV News.